Have you ever sat in your favorite chair and suddenly realized the silence isn't peaceful? It's hollow? Not the comforting kind of quiet that comes after a long day, but the kind that makes the room feel heavier. You look up, and it's already evening. The clock ticks loud, the light is fading, and the air just feels still. Living alone has its freedom, yes. You can eat when you like, sleep when you please, spread out your laundry without anyone fussing. But there's a side no one talks about, a quieter ache that sneaks in slowly. It's not loneliness in the obvious sense. It's something gentler, more invisible. Like forgetting when you last opened a window just because. We don't often think of habits as dangerous, but they can be. Not in the way of crime or disaster, but in how they chip away at your energy, your sharpness, your spirit. One skipped meal becomes two. One day without speaking to someone turns into a week. And somewhere along the way you stop noticing. But here's the thing. You're not fragile. You've lived through enough to know what matters. This chapter of life isn't about decline, it's about intention. And intention starts small. That's what we're going to do here. Walk through 10 simple things that people often overlook when living alone. Not to scare you, not to shame you, but to remind you. Your peace of mind, your safety, your clarity, they're all still yours to protect. And if no one has said this lately, it's not too late to feel strong, sharp, and steady again. Not at all. The truth is, most of the habits we'll talk about today are so ordinary we hardly see them, but they quietly shape how well we age, how steady, clear, and confident we feel. By the end, you won't just have a list of things to avoid. You'll have 10 small but powerful shifts that make living alone feel like a gift and less like a risk. So if you've ever sat alone and wondered, is this really how it's supposed to feel? Know that you're not the only one. There are small things we can do every day to feel more alive, more connected, and more in control. If that sounds like something you need more of, I'd be glad to have you subscribe. 1. Don't ignore your gut feeling when something feels off. Harold never used to second-guess himself. He was a Navy man in his younger years, sharp, steady, not easily shaken. But the day he told me, I don't know, something just doesn't feel right, it wasn't about a storm or a ship. It was about his front door. It was locked, sure, but something about the way the curtain fluttered, the way the house felt off. He noticed it, and that little nudge in his gut, he listened. He called a neighbor instead of brushing it off. Turns out, someone had tampered with the lock while he was at church. Nothing stolen, thankfully. But that instinct may have saved him from something worse. That gut feeling. It's real. It's the quiet wisdom built over decades of living, watching, surviving. But so many of us have learned to push it aside. We tell ourselves we're just being paranoid, that we're imagining things, that nobody would target us. But as we grow older, trusting our instincts becomes even more important, not less. Because here's the truth. When you live alone, you're often the only one who notices. The only one who hears that strange knock, smells something unusual in the kitchen, or feels your body just isn't quite right today. And that awareness? It matters. A missed symptom could be an early warning. A strange sound in the night could be nothing. Or it could be a window latch coming loose. Ignoring these feelings doesn't make you stronger. Paying attention to them doesn't make you weak. It makes you smart. So what's the simple habit to build here? Pause. Breathe. Check in with yourself when something seems off, whether it's in your body, your home, or your daily rhythm. Write it down. Call someone. Trust yourself enough to say, I don't feel quite right, and follow up. That one choice could change everything. Because when you've made it this far in life, your instincts have earned your respect. You don't need to explain them to anyone. You just need to listen. 2. Don't skip the small daily routines that keep you grounded. You wake up and sit there for a while. Not quite ready to face the day, not really sure why. The coffee pot stays cold, the robe stays on. You look up and it's already noon. You tell yourself you'll shower after breakfast, but breakfast never really happened. Maybe just toast, or nothing at all. The bed's still unmade, and the blinds are still drawn. It's not that anything's wrong exactly, but it doesn't feel quite right either. That's how it starts. Not with a crash, but with a quiet slide. I remember going nearly 3 days without stepping outside once. The fridge was full. The house was tidy. but I just didn't feel like I had a reason. No one was stopping by, nothing on the calendar, and somehow brushing my hair felt like too much effort. It's strange how quickly time loses its shape when we lose the little things that used to hold it up. Daily routines, brushing your teeth, opening the window, doing a crossword, they aren't just chores, they're anchors. They remind your body it's morning, remind your brain it's time to be present, and remind your heart that you're still part of the rhythm of the world. And when those routines slip, so does everything else. Your energy, your memory, your sense of clarity. Seniors are especially vulnerable here. A few skipped meals can lead to dizziness. Too many still days can weaken balance. Missed meds or poor hydration can even cloud your thinking. But this isn't about keeping a perfect schedule. It's about choosing 1 or 2 small habits each day that remind you you're still living, you're still here. Even something as simple as making your bed or drinking water before coffee can create momentum. If it helps, write it down. Keep a gentle checklist, not to pressure yourself, but to keep time from feeling so loose and slippery. Better yet, pair one of your routines with connection. Call a friend while you fold laundry. Put the radio on while you do your stretches. These simple ties to the day can be surprisingly powerful. Because routines aren't boring, they're life-giving. They're how we show ourselves we're worth the care, even when no one else is watching. So if today feels foggy, start small. Pull back the curtains. Pour that cup of coffee, and take the next step, however tiny. This is your life. You get to set the rhythm, one steady moment at a time. 3. Don't bottle up your emotions or pretend you're fine when you're not. You know that moment when someone asks how you're doing, and without thinking you say, "I'm fine," not because you actually feel fine, but because it's easier, safer, quieter. Some days, the truth just feels too heavy to unpack. Maybe you've been holding in sadness over how much your life has changed. Maybe anger simmers beneath the surface, but you push it aside. Or maybe it's that hollow feeling. Not quite sadness, not quite peace, just numbness. A kind of emotional fog that rolls in without warning. When you live alone, those feelings don't always get a place to land. You don't want to burden your kids. Your friends have their own troubles. And after a while, bottling things up starts to feel normal, even polite. But just because you're managing doesn't mean you're okay. Bottled up emotions don't disappear. They get stored in your body, in your habits, in that tightness in your chest, in your sudden irritability, in that heavy sigh when the house gets too quiet. Over time, they chip away at your health. Unspoken grief can become insomnia. Chronic stress can raise your blood pressure. Emotional loneliness can cloud your memory, your appetite, even your immune system. And pretending you're fine doesn't make the ache go away. It just buries it deeper. But there's a gentler way through. Start by naming the feeling, out loud or in writing. Call a friend who listens without fixing. Keep a simple feelings journal, no pressure. Or just talk to the mirror like an old friend. You don't have to perform. You just have to release a little bit of the weight. Letting it out doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise enough to know that you matter, and your heart deserves tending too. And if that weight is still there, quietly waiting to be lifted, then maybe the next point will help ease it. And 4. Don't let clutter build up. It affects more than just your space. You don't always notice it right away. A few papers left on the table, a chair quietly claimed by a pile of clothes, a drawer that no longer closes because it's filled with things you'll go through later. At first, it just looks like life happening, but slowly, it starts to feel heavier, not just physically, emotionally. What we keep around us has a funny way of echoing what's happening inside us. And clutter isn't just about mess, it's about energy. It drains it, quietly, subtly. When you're surrounded by things you no longer use, need, or even remember why you kept, it becomes harder to think clearly, to move freely, to feel light. You may find yourself avoiding rooms, putting off simple tasks, or feeling a sense of unease you can't quite name. And for those of us aging alone, this silent buildup of clutter isn't just inconvenient, it's dangerous. Trip hazards become more common. Emergency responders may struggle to navigate if help is ever needed. Important documents get lost in the shuffle, and the more things pile up, the less likely we are to invite someone in, which only deepens the sense of isolation. But it doesn't have to be about throwing everything away or becoming a minimalist overnight. Sometimes it starts with just one drawer, one bag of old mail, one shelf you choose to clear, not because it's time to clean, but because you deserve to breathe easier in your own home. One woman shared that she started by asking herself, if something happened to me tomorrow, what would I want someone else to fight? That question didn't shame her, it freed her. And once she started, the lightness came back, not just in her home, but in her chest. And the most surprising part? It's not the clutter you clear that changes everything. It's the moment you realize why you were holding on to it in the first place. 5. Don't try to do everything alone. Ask for help when you need it. Some people will balance 5 grocery bags on each arm, nudge the door open with their elbow, and insist they don't need a hand. Not because they're trying to show off, but because they've been doing things alone for so long. It feels like second nature. Independence is a beautiful thing. It gives life rhythm, freedom, and pride. But when it becomes your only mode of living, it can quietly turn into something else. Disconnection. Not emotional, necessarily, but practical. Like pushing through dizziness while changing a ceiling bulb, or struggling with heavy laundry, knowing full well your back isn't what it used to be, or saying I'm fine when your body is telling you otherwise. Help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Someone once shared how she stopped asking her niece for visits because she didn't want to intrude. Later, she found out the niece had been waiting all along. Unsure if she was welcome, all it took was one gentle nudge. That's the shift. A neighbor with strong hands. A friend who enjoys a quick chat while helping out. These little bridges aren't signs you're losing independence. They're signs you're investing in interdependence and peace of mind. And if this feels like the kind of space you'd like to return to, feel free to subscribe. 6. Don't let the house get too quiet for too long. Add life to your space. It doesn't happen all at once. First, the TV isn't turned on for a few days. Then you forget to play music in the mornings like you used to. Maybe the phone hasn't rung this week, or if it has, you let it go to voicemail because you weren't quite in the mood. And then one day, you realize the silence isn't peaceful anymore. It's heavy. Stillness is important, but too much of it? That can chip away at something deeper. There's a kind of noise that's good for the soul. A favorite jazz station playing softly in the kitchen. The whir of the washing machine on a quiet afternoon. Even the chatter of a podcast keeping you company while you fold laundry. These aren't distractions. They're reminders that life is still moving around you, and you're part of it. Studies have shown that long periods of silence, especially in older adults who live alone, can actually contribute to cognitive decline, low mood, and disconnection. It's not just about boredom. It's about the brain missing those small signals that keep it engaged. And no, this doesn't mean you need constant noise. What it means is create life around you. Play music while you cook. Let natural light in. Keep the radio on for a few hours, even if you're reading. You might even talk to your pet or yourself. Yes, out loud. It helps more than you think. Some people find it helpful to schedule sound anchors into their day. A call with a friend in the morning, a TV show they enjoy in the evening, a church live stream on Sunday. It's not about distraction, it's about connection. Even if you're not speaking to anyone in the moment, you're letting something in. When the house feels too quiet for too long, it's easy to start feeling invisible. And when you feel invisible, you stop reaching. You stop responding. But the moment you turn something on, a voice, a melody, a laugh, the air shifts, and suddenly you remember, you're still here. You're still part of the world. So what if filling your space with sound again was more than comfort? What if it was a kind of medicine for the mind, the memory, and the spirit? 7. Don't stop caring about how you look and feel. There's a certain day, and you don't always see it coming, when getting dressed starts to feel optional. Not in a lazy way, just unnecessary. You think, I'm not going anywhere, no one's coming over. Why bother with all that? So the old sweater stays on, the socks don't match. Maybe you skip the earrings you used to reach for every morning, or leave the aftershave untouched. It seems harmless at first, comfortable even. But over time, something subtle begins to shift. You catch your reflection and barely recognize the spark you used to carry. Not because of age, but because somewhere along the way, the ritual of showing up for yourself got lost. I know someone in her late 70s who lives alone. Every morning, without fail, she puts on a touch of lipstick, brushes her short white hair, and slips into a bright blouse, even if she's not leaving the house. I asked her why once. She said, because it reminds me that I'm still here. I'm still me. That one habit, she told me, is the difference between a slow day and a lost one. Now, let's be clear. This isn't about vanity. This is about dignity, about identity. How we present ourselves on the outside often feeds how we feel on the inside. When we stop tending to that outer expression, we sometimes begin to shrink inside ourselves too. Motivation dips, energy fades, and slowly the mirror becomes something we avoid instead of embrace. For we older adults, this change can carry real weight. Researchers have found that self-neglect, even small things like wearing the same clothes for days or skipping hygiene habits, can be an early signal of depression, cognitive decline, or even grief that hasn't been processed. And when our physical care declines, so does our immune function, balance, even our willingness to leave the house. It becomes a cycle. The less we care, the less we do, and the smaller our world becomes. But the good news? That cycle can be interrupted. You don't need a ball gown or a tie to feel good. Maybe it's brushing your hair even when no one's watching, wearing a color that lifts your mood, putting on your favorite lotion just because, lighting a candle while you wash your face, not for anyone else, but because it makes you feel alive. These aren't frivolous things, they're lifelines. Little rituals of self-respect that quietly whisper, I still matter. And you do. So the next time you feel tempted to say, it doesn't matter, pause. Because maybe, just maybe, it does more than you know. If this gave you something to hold on to, I'd love to see you subscribe. 8. Don't let your body stop moving. Even small motion matters. There's a quiet shift that happens when the body starts slowing down. Not from choice, but from comfort or fatigue or the simple absence of urgency. Mornings stretch into afternoons, chairs become easier than shoes, and the idea of movement feels optional. Evelyn, a woman I've known for years, used to take a gentle walk every morning, just 10 minutes down the lane and back. Rain or shine, it was her way of greeting the day. But then came a harsh winter. Her knees ached more than usual, the sidewalks were slick, and one skipped walk turned into 3. Then a week, then a month. By spring, the shoes by her door were still spotless. That's how stillness begins. It doesn't announce itself with a loud thud, it tiptoes in. One missed walk, one day of not stretching, a quiet resignation that says, maybe tomorrow. But tomorrow becomes background noise. And the cost? It builds quietly too. Muscles soften, balance becomes shaky, joints stiffen in ways that make even standing feel like work. Even digestion, sleep, and mood begin to shift. The body starts forgetting what it used to do without effort. And maybe most heartbreaking of all, confidence fades. That deep inner knowing that says, I'm still capable, begins to whisper instead of roar. But here's the beauty. Motion doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't require a gym or a yoga mat or even perfect knees. It could be standing while brushing your teeth, a slow stretch while the kettle boils, dancing in socks for 30 seconds when your favorite song plays. Every small movement tells your body, we're not giving up. And the body listens. And that brings us to something else that's easy to forget in quiet homes. Something that needs even more than motion to stay alive. 9. Don't let your mind go idle. Keep learning and engaging. It can happen slowly, almost without you noticing. Days start to blend together. The newspaper gets skimmed instead of read. The TV hums in the background, but nothing really sticks. There's no test coming up, no job to prepare for, no big decision to wrestle with. So the mind, once sharp and quick and curious, starts to coast. I know someone who was always sharp as a tack. Her name is Carol, retired math teacher. When she lost her husband, the spark in her conversations started to fade. She still read the paper, but not like before. She stopped doing her crossword puzzles. What's the point? She said once, folding the page in half. There's no one to laugh over the silly clues with anymore. A year later, during a routine checkup, her doctor gently told her that her memory was slipping. Not drastically, but noticeably. Not from illness, but from lack of exercise. Not of the body, but the brain. The truth is, the mind needs movement just like our legs and arms do. It needs to be challenged, poked, stretched, surprised. And when we stop giving it those little sparks, a new idea, a good debate, a funny book, a new recipe, it begins to slow. Not because we're broken, but because we've stopped asking it to show up. That doesn't mean you need to take up algebra again. Sometimes it's as simple as learning one new word a day, asking why instead of oh well, watching a documentary, writing a letter, trying a new hobby that scares you a little. Keeping the mind engaged isn't about becoming a genius. It's about staying alive inside your own life. It's about keeping the world a little wider, the days a little more textured. The brain, like the heart, wants to keep reaching. And speaking of hearts, the final point we're about to explore might be the one that protects yours the most. 10. Don't lose your sense of purpose. Find something that gives your days meaning. There comes a morning when the calendar is blank. No one to call, nowhere to be. The house is still, the coffee brews, and everything feels fine. But not full. That's the word. Not full. It's easy to think that slowing down means stepping back entirely. After retirement, or after the children leave, or after a loss, the pace changes. And at first, that slower rhythm can feel like relief. But eventually, without something that stirs your energy, that challenges your thoughts or makes you feel needed, the days begin to blur. I know someone who struggled with that. After her husband passed and her volunteer work ended, she didn't know what to do with herself. She kept the house tidy, watched her shows, even baked now and then. But she confessed one day, "I don't feel useful anymore. I feel like I'm just here." That quiet confession carries more weight than most realize. Because a sense of purpose isn't just a nice idea, it's a lifeline. It keeps your brain active, your heart open, your body moving. Studies have even shown that older adults who maintain a strong sense of purpose live longer, with better mental health and greater resilience. But finding purpose doesn't have to be grand or dramatic. It might be checking in on a neighbor every Wednesday, writing down old stories for your grandchildren, tending to a tiny garden, or mentoring someone younger by phone. What matters is that you feel it has value, that it lights something in you, even just a spark. And if you felt like your spark is fading, it doesn't mean it's gone. It just means it needs tending. So the real question becomes, what would make you feel useful again? What's one small way you could brighten someone else's day or stretch your own limits just a little? That may be the most important thing to protect in this chapter of life. Not just your safety or your health, but your why. Let's talk about what that could look like, because the next chapter, it's still yours to write. If this gave you even one moment of clarity or made you feel a little less alone in your journey, I hope you'll subscribe. Not just to this channel, but to the idea that aging can still be powerful, intentional, and deeply human. There's quiet power in choosing how you age. Not rushing, not striving, just noticing and gently adjusting. Living alone doesn't mean facing life empty-handed. It means you hold the pen, you shape the story. No, you don't need to be perfect. You only need to be present. Small shifts in how you move, eat, think, and care can change how it feels to be alone. They build peace where there was ache, light where there was heaviness. Even setting the table for one is a way of saying, I still matter. A warm meal, a well-lit room, a quiet night that feels safe, not silent. You're not just getting older. You're getting better at honoring what truly matters.